Welcome back to the Warehouse Podcast. I'm Tyler.
I'm Jesse.
And I'm Eli.
And this episode's going to come out in December. I was going to say we're going to get 2 episodes done in 1 month in November.
Man.
We almost got there.
Well, theoretically, we did get 2 done in the 1 month because we did them.
That's true.
We didn't release 2 episodes in 1 month, but
not within 1 calendar month, but like it'll be less than like a month between the episodes. So that's kind of a win right there.
I think we have technicality'd our way out of this.
I agree. I'm giving it to us.
I feel like I'm normally the one like quibbling over stuff like this, so I'm excited that Eli is right now. So
yeah, Jesse's a details guy. If you've ever met him, he's all about the details. But yeah, this is going to be our off-season preview episode. We're doing it pretty late in for it to be counting as a preview at this point. But as we were talking before the show, fortunately or unfortunately, the Orioles haven't done a whole lot to this point, so we haven't missed a whole lot.
I'll go with fortunately because it would be unfortunate if other teams had been doing a ton and like 38 of the top 50 free agents were off the board, but that's not the case. So yeah, fortunate for us and not unfortunate in any other way.
Yeah, there's plenty of meat on the bone still for the Orioles too. Jesse, did you not appreciate that? I know Jesse is a vegetarian amongst us, so he might not have liked that terminology, meat on the bone. What should I have said?
It's really interesting you bring this up. I'm actually vegan now.
Oh, okay.
But yeah. But
breaking news on the pod.
But right. But I wasn't reacting. I got the analogy. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, there's plenty of tofu in the mold.
Exactly.
Left for this off season for the Orioles to make a big splash and hopefully perpetuate their goals and aspirations that Mike Elias has said they have for 2024. But so what we want to do is kind of break this up into 2 parts. The first part, they're going to be unequal parts, but the first part, we just kind of want to recap what's happened in the last month. Like we said, not a whole lot, but there has been a few things. We might have some thoughts to share on that. And then we want to spend the majority of it talking about what's coming up between now and, even spring training, but particularly this next couple weeks, especially the winter meetings, which are starting next week. So I say we kick stuff off by just kind of recapping what's happened so far, some of the highlights. We'll stop at certain junctures and talk about things as we see fit. But I think the biggest thing that's happened so far for the Orioles this offseason is some changes on the pitching coach staff. So both Chris Holt and Darren Holmes. So Chris Holt was the Orioles pitching coach, had been for a couple of years, also their director of pitching. He's no longer going to serve as the pitching coach moving forward. He will retain his job as the director of pitching, which the Orioles have said will allow him to work on individual plans with pitchers as high as the major leagues, as low as, rookie league. Whereas Darren Holmes is just going to be leaving the organization altogether. And although this has not been officially announced by the Orioles, Drew French, it's being reported, will be the Orioles' new pitching coach, taking over for Holt. French has most recently been the bullpen coach for the Braves. He was also in the Astros organization from 2016 until 2020, so he overlapped with both Mike Elias and Chris Holt when they were in the Astros organization. And Eli, you had shared a factoid on that before we got on here about Holt and French's sort of relationship there. Did you want to kind of repeat that for everybody?
Yeah, it was kind of amusing, but if this does come true, like Tyler said, not announced by the club, but if this does come true, it'll be like the 3rd or 4th time that French will have replaced Chris Holt as a pitching coach, as Holt was stepping up through the minor leagues in the Astros organization. French was basically just his replacement at every level and kept ascending with him. So seems like, there's philosophical alignment, there's history with, like you said, him and Elias. So yeah, I think should be a good fit, and we should expect to see a lot more of the same progression that we've seen.
Yeah, it kind of makes it seem like it's not so much of like a demotion for Holt as sort of like an understanding. I don't know if you hear my children behind me, so I'll restart that point. It doesn't that point about Holt and French's kind of continuing relationship makes it seem like this isn't really much of it's not a demotion or anything for Holt, as so much as an understanding between him, Elias, the organization, that your talents are better used maybe in a director capacity versus a coaching capacity. And I'm sure whole will still have a big impact on the Orioles pitching development. Which I think, like, a thing I thought about here is that it's interesting that they are shaking things up so much after a season 2023 that I felt was pretty successful from the pitching perspective. Like, clearly there's room to grow there. They certainly weren't the best pitching staff in the league. There were holes at the back of the rotation, and we saw the bullpen not fall apart when Felix Bautista left. They were still pretty solid, but it definitely felt a little shakier. So, Jess, I know you don't have a lot to add on, like, maybe French in particular. I don't know a lot about French, but what do you think about, like, the idea of switching things up after it seemed like we were making some progress on the pitching front?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just sort of reshuffling the deck here, right? Nobody got fired. Nobody, if there were like, if there was a more major shakeup like that, it would be a little, it would be much more confusing than this is. But this is just, I think, sort of crystallizing people's roles within the organization a little bit more. And but I don't think I don't think this is like a mixed message to what we felt like was demonstrated in the regular season.
Yeah, fair enough, for sure. And then the only other tidbit on that is it sounded like the Orioles also talked to Andrew Bailey for the pitching coach job. I remember him being a pitcher for the Athletics, I feel like, yesterday, and now he's a coach. Is just wild. We're just getting older here, I guess. But there's no indication that the Orioles offered Bailey the job and he said no, but Bailey is going to be joining the Red Sox staff as their pitching coach. So kind of an interesting interdivision sort of storyline there that probably doesn't matter at all, but I figured I would talk about it anyway. All right, moving on to the next biggest thing I think of the offseason so far was sort of the lack of news, which was the arbitration deadline, the non-tender deadline, the protect minor leaguers from the Rule 5 deadline. It all kind of rolls into one. And it was the first shocking bit was that the Orioles offered contracts to all of their arbitration eligible players. And that included some fringy names, including Ryan McKenna, who's out of options now, Keegan Aiken, who was hurt last year, has largely been ineffective, apart from, like, I think half of a season as a major leaguer. And then Jorge Mateo, who I think we all agree on this show definitely has some skills and talents that belong on a winning team, but he's out of options. The Orioles have a lot of infield prospects. They're trying to get in the lineup, and he clearly wasn't one of the preferred options towards the end of the season, apart from occasionally against left-handed pitching. But Jess, I'll go to you first maybe on that. Like, what do you think about that decision real quick on the decision to offer contracts to all of the arbitration players? Were you surprised by one in particular? Not surprised? What do you think?
Yeah, I would say I was a little bit surprised. As far as Mateo, I can definitely, I think he, for me at least, makes the most sense. To keep. I know Eli, I think had previously stated he didn't think he'd be on the team this upcoming season. And I, I think it sort of could go either way. I'm not committed sort of one way or the other. But like you said, Tyler, he definitely has a lot of skills and abilities that are useful to a winning baseball team. So that's not that surprising. Um, I mean, arguably, like Keegan Aiken and McKenna are a little, I think, less. I think they're more difficult to justify a little bit. Um, I think the big thing with McKenna is just sort of the amount of outfield prospects we have pushing themselves to the major league level, and how McKenna fits in with that. Um, Especially basically his role is a fourth outfielder. He's not going to be a starter. He's not going to be in the lineup every day. His ceiling sort of is a fourth outfielder. So, and we have a bunch of other guys that came up, Kowser and Kerstad being the main ones. Of course, Kerstad doesn't play center like McKenna does, but so there's both of those things. And then as far as Keegan Aiken, it's just a question of like how much is Aiken really adding to the middle the middle innings depth we have, and I don't think a lot.
Yeah, fair enough. I think Aiken was the one I maybe was the most surprised they hung on to. I think he's still got an option left, so that's probably the only thing keeping him around. But Eli, what do you think about all that stuff with the arbitration? Any surprises there?
Yeah, I think that Aiken was also the most surprising to me. But what I can say is that um, I think that to McKenna, I think Mateo makes more sense because he, like we've seen what he is as a utility guy, and it's pretty effective, and he hits lefties all right. So again, tools that fit on a winning team. But McKenna was a little bit more surprising to me. I think all of it really boils down to the Orioles are trying to kind of maximize their operational flexibility as they go into this offseason. I think that there are scenarios this year, where like I think this one would be a pretty crazy scenario, but if Kjerstad and Cowser both get dealt this offseason, or a Kjerstad and a Santander, or a Cowser and Santander, or Cowser and like any combination of two of our current outfielders, then there's a place for Ryan McKenna to slide up as the fourth outfielder on this team. We've seen him play that role, and he's perfectly fine at it. I think that the biggest thing for the Orioles at this stage in the offseason is, we're not going to go out and sign somebody for $30 million a year as a starting pitcher, probably. Jordan Montgomery getting $150 million deal, like $150 million deal is probably not in the cards for us. So to me, like, you are going to need to make some moves via trade to really maximize this offseason. And, keeping the largest collection of position players allows you to kind of pick and choose how you want to like most effectively utilize the capital you have. And I think that's really what this is about. The Orioles can get out from all of the arbitration contracts if they're not on the team when the year comes around. So, if they need to cut somebody, I'm sure they will be willing to do that.
Yeah, I think that was the thing I was going to touch on is this doesn't like it guarantees them somewhat in that, this player is around and they have a job throughout the winter. But if the Orioles determine they don't want to hold on to this guy into the spring or even onto the opening day roster, it's not really a huge loss. It's more of a security thing for them, which is unfortunate for the players to a degree. You'd rather them be able to go sign wherever they think they have the best chance of playing next year. But that's just not how the game works, at least not the first 5 or 6 years of your career. But yeah, good points. And related to that, and what made the Orioles able to offer contracts to all these guys is the fact that they didn't protect any minor leaguers from the Rule 5 draft. Now, that is not a huge surprise because the Orioles class of players that was eligible for the Rule 5 draft this year was not particularly interesting. I think Hudson Haskin was the only one that could have been on there. He's like a top 15-ish prospect within the Orioles organization, but he had injuries all year, didn't play that well when he played. And so his chances of even getting picked in the Rule 5 are a little bit diminished there. But I don't know, Eli, did you have any thoughts on that? It's kind of it's not as sexy of a conversation anymore, the Rule 5 and the protecting prospects when the Orioles are good now. But any shock that they didn't protect anybody this year?
Yeah, I'm not completely shocked. I did think that Wanderson Charles had a chance just because he seems like the type of guy that would go big fastball, one solid secondary pitch. It seems like the kind of guy you can stash in a bullpen and run him out for one inning and try to develop the skill set a little bit more. I do think his stuff faded down the stretch, so the Orioles might not see it as large of a risk as they might have, back in May or so. Yeah. But yeah, largely, like as you said, the class was not as strong as we've seen in recent years. So
yeah,
this burp, excuse me. No concern with with not protecting anyone, and I don't necessarily expect us to make a selection either.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Jesse, what do you think about that? Do you think the Orioles will make a Rule 5 select? Not that I don't think any of us, well, I'll speak for me and Jesse. I don't think either one of us knows who is out there that could be picked in the Rule 5 draft that is particularly interesting. But what do you think about that, Jesse, in general? Just like not picking a Rule 5 guy?
No, I think it's more likely that the Orioles end up picking somebody. Whether they make it through the entire year with us, I think is unlikely. But I think it would be pretty standard practice for the Orioles to pick somebody give them a little bit of an audition, see what they can do, see if the Orioles can. I think the Orioles, they like their ability, I think rightfully so, to be able to look at a talented pitcher and to bring them into our organization, put them around our coaches, and then see if they can do well. And because the Orioles have that ability, I think, for when you make a Rule 5 selection, there's basically no cost for the organization. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if the Orioles ventured out and tried to take somebody.
If my counting is correct, the Orioles 40-man is currently at 36. So they have 4 spots. And I think taking a Rule 5 guy is kind of like you said, it's sort of a buy low or like a low risk, relatively low reward, but it's like $100,000 to pick one, and then like $50,000 you get back if you give him back.
You offer him back for 50.
Anthony Santander was a Rule 5 pick, and I mean, it's not always low reward, but yeah.
Sorry, the only thing I was going to say is that I do think we're kind of in an interesting situation this year because we do have more guys in the bullpen than we typically do who don't have options. Like Cianel Perez is out of options. Danny Coulomb has none. I think we might have used up Brian Baker's last one last year. I think Mike Bauman's out of options.
That's fine. Well, the Baker one's fine.
Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. Like I agree that it's fine, but I think we're in a situation where the roster the bullpen flexibility is not there as much as it has been in previous years. So like the ability to carry an Andrew Politi through a couple of weeks of the season might not be there. And especially like if we bring in a starting pitcher or two and a Tyler Wells slides to the bullpen, we can confirm that DL Hall is there. And I think that there's just less and less space. So the Orioles might not see it as even worthwhile to try to fit somebody in there because it's going to end up forcing somebody more established like a Perez or a Coulomb or somebody without options. It's going to force them off the roster to even carry this person out of spring training.
Yeah, it's a good point. Other people out of options now. Cole Irvin's out of options. Jacob Webb, and then Perez, Bauman, Coulomb. So yeah, definitely a good point.
Cole Irvin's going to be a tough one.
What do you mean to not demote?
Yeah, I mean, especially with how the season started last year. I mean, we got him because we had multiple years of quote unquote control. But the fact that he doesn't have any options makes it a little more difficult.
I do think that he was better in the pen, and he was definitely better after he went down and came back up. So I could see a path. It is interesting how many lefties that would leave us in the bullpen, though. If you assume Hall's there, then Cole Irvin would be your 4th lefty in the bullpen after Coulomb and Perez too.
Yeah, it's a unique setup. I'm sure that I hope that will get taken care of, or they do something about it this offseason to make it a little bit more logical. But that could also depend on what other teams do. If the Yankees go and get Juan Soto, you need those lefties out there, I guess. But we'll talk about that in a minute. Well, not Juan Soto probably, but other winter stuff here in a minute. All right, real quick on the awards. The Orioles won awards this year, which is awesome. Brandon Hyde was named AL Manager of the Year, deservedly so. Gunnar Henderson was unanimously named AL Rookie of the Year, deservingly so. And Felix Bautista won AL Reliever of the Year, also unanimously. Again, very well deserved. Other Orioles getting award love. Kyle Bradish got some down ballot Cy Young votes. I think Ryan O'Hearn was nominated for Comeback Player of the Year. No Gold Glove winners this year, but I think Mountcastle was in the finalists. Rutschman, Hayes. So good year overall. Mullins would have been if he hadn't gotten hurt. But yeah, really, really good year for the Orioles from the awards perspective. I mean, any comment on that? Any awards we didn't get that we should have won, fellas?
I don't think so, honestly. Yeah. I kind of I kind of agreed with everything that happened. I was super scared when the Jeff Passan tweet came out, and everybody was like, they didn't put them in alphabetical order. They put them in the order of, I don't know if you guys saw this.
I feel like I remember vaguely. Which award was this?
So it was all of the awards.
Oh.
And like Ohtani was the first name for MVP. You know, Gunnar was the first name for Rookie of the Year. And you went down this whole list and it was like, yeah, these are just like 1, 2, 3, the order of the voting. But Bochy was first. And so everybody was assuming he would win it. Okay. And like the way that the Rangers collapsed in September and gave away the division, I was primed to scream. I was going to be very upset. But Brandon Hyde got his due, and the Orioles, are coming home with some hardware.
Yeah, I do just want to say that I continue to absolutely hate the way in which Major League Baseball announces the awards. I have no idea when they're coming out. They're just scattershot. They're random. The comeback player was literally just announced like a day ago out of just nowhere.
And
what are they doing?
AL reliever of the year was 2 days ago.
Yeah.
Just like a random Monday in November. Like what are we doing?
I don't know. Like the NFL does it like the week of the Super Bowl. Like here's all the awards when you're all caring about us. Just do it during the World Series. Or the day before the World Series. I don't understand. Whatever.
It
they
was
didn't ask me.
During Monday Night Football that they announced the relievers of the year, and it's like,
what are we doing?
I don't know. Yeah. It's a shame.
Anyway. Jesse, any comment on the sorry, Eli, go ahead.
I was just gonna say what they lack in publicity there, we're making up for here on the Warehouse Pod, shouting them out right now.
So. There you go. Accountability. That's what journalism is all about. Jesse, any thoughts?
Just that, I mean, these were all I don't think with any of these there really should have been much doubt about each of these Henderson, Felix, or Hyde winning these awards. So it makes sense to me that Felix and Henderson were unanimous. But I think there's also a strong case that Hyde should have been as well. Just because, I mean, how do you? I don't know. I mean, of course, we all know that Bruce Bochy is brilliant and all that, But aside from that, I mean, turning around the 83 win team to a 101 win team. I mean, and historically that is always how manager of the year is usually distributed. It's always whatever team like outperformed expectations like by the most is usually the manager that wins the award. So I don't know why was Hyde not unanimous, or I don't know. So but it's a small, gripe overall. Yeah, exactly. So,
yeah, you could have argued Hyde should have won it in 2022 too, making that team
100%, 100%. Yeah.
All right, a couple more things just that have happened so far. I don't have any strong feelings on any of these, but I want to shout them out anyway. So the Orioles signed left-handed pitcher Tucker Davidson to a pre-arb contract, and then they immediately outrighted him off the 40-man and assigned him to AAA. Utility man Taron Vavra was also off-righted off the 40-man and assigned to AAA. So both of them are still in the organization. You'll probably see him at spring training. Might even make a major league appearance next year. Joey Kreibel has elected free agency after being DFA'd at the end of the season. So he is no longer in the organization. You never know. Could sign on as a spring training invitee or something. Outfielder Sam Hilliard was claimed off waivers from the Braves, and he is currently on the 40-man roster. He's like the one name right now on the team that you're like, who is this person? It's Sam Hilliard from the Braves, obviously. He's like 29 years old. Why is he on the team? I don't know. I couldn't tell you, but he's there. Any strong feelings on any of these moves, guys? Is Sam Hilliard putting the 2024 Orioles over the top?
Well, it's not super strong, but I am actually mildly interested by Hilliard. Okay. And I'm gonna throw out two quick things. So A, 90th percentile sprint speed. He is very fast. B, his hard hit rate was 48.7%, which would come in at 4th on last year's Orioles, just ahead of Anthony Santander and Ryan Mountcastle. His max exit velocities are like consistently over 114 or so. And that is, I'm pretty sure he would have had the hardest hit ball in the Orioles last year with that 114. So definitely like a lot of pop in the bat. His swing decisions are solid. Like chase rate is only 24%. I don't know. I think that there is something pretty interesting here. He strikes out a ton. He swings and misses a lot. Doesn't draw walks all that well. So like, this is a guy we got off waivers. So I'm not trying to make him out to be like the saving grace of the 2024 Orioles, but I do think there are some legitimately interesting traits here. And I'm curious, it's like I said, with tendering everybody a contract, like we're trying to maximize just the number of possible combinations we could step into next year with. And I think that he's an asset for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I will say after the Orioles turned around Ryan O'Hearn, who had a major league track record, a short one, but not a good one, you kind of give him the benefit of the doubt here. Hilliard does have parts of 5 seasons of major league experience. He was with the Rockies for 4 years before he played part of last year with the Braves. So we'll see. I mean, he's going to be 30 by opening day, has no options remaining. So back to that flexibility point, he doesn't provide a lot of that, but maybe you sneak him through waivers. He's older. Some people could maybe discount him and he could sit at AAA or something, but yeah, tough to see how he currently makes it on the big league roster. I guess you said he probably is a center fielder though, so maybe there's something there. But yeah, I mean, interesting. Jesse, you want to talk about Sam Hilliard for a couple minutes?
I mean, no, I mean, I actually was sort of more initially gravitated to Crable, just because I think people forget how important of a role he did play for us a couple years ago. Granted, we didn't make the playoffs or make any push or anything like that, but he was a solid middle reliever for us and obviously didn't have it last year. And this is your point, Tyler, sort of about middle relievers is they just sort of become defective frequently or far too frequently after a few years. Or ineffective as pitchers, I guess. I know defective is word. Yeah, I know, right, yeah.
Crable didn't even get to pitch last year. He was in the minors all year until the very end. That was kind of shocking to me, I think, at the time.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it makes sense that we're in this situation with him having DFA'd him. But yeah, he was a middle relief bullpen guy, but he was important for us a couple years ago, and Hyde did rely on him pretty heavily a couple years ago. So
yeah.
Oh yeah, he if we had gotten him in 2018, 2019, he would have been our best middle reliever for 3 seasons. But times are changing, and we moved on up in the world, and especially with hopefully Dylan Tate being healthy next year, not a lot of room there. But
yeah.
All right, let's talk about the offseason ahead. This is where we want to spend the majority of our time. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. Have kind of a freewheeling discussion here. So it's, as this episode comes out, going to be December 1st. The Orioles basically have the same roster vacancies that existed coming into the offseason. They've done very little. They've made moves on the edges, but they still have a lot to do. Mike Elias said in early November, had an interview at the GM meetings, which are different from the winter meetings, which are different from the owners' meetings. Too many meetings. But he said in November that he hoped to add a pitcher to the front half of the rotation. That's open to interpretation. And then a late inning reliever, preferably with closer experience or the ability to close games. So I think maybe we start there with those priorities. Eli, what do you think about those priorities for the 2024 Orioles? Are those the same priorities you have for this team? Or do you have something different in mind?
I just want to comment on your priorities and making sure you made a comment that there were too many meetings.
Too many meetings. It's the same thing I say at work.
Too many
meetings. We could have slacked about this or emailed about it, and don't need this meeting. But
yeah, no, I agree with Elias. I think that if you look at good teams, you see a lot of pitching depth for the starting rotation. People always talked about the Dodgers and how Tony Gonsolin a couple of years ago was in the bullpen and now he's an all-star, et cetera, et cetera. And I think the Orioles are in a position where we do, from the starting rotation standpoint, kind of start to look like we're having that depth. We've got maybe 1 or 2 arms in McDermott and Povich who look like they could be mid to back rotation guys. We've got Tyler Wells, we've got DL Hall, and so there are arms that can fill out a rotation. And through some combination of them, you can, put together a good year, I think. That said, adding somebody who just slots into that role as a back end or potential swingman or potential long relief guy, adding somebody of that ilk, I don't think really pushes the needle for this team. So when he talks about a front of the rotation arm, we are talking about the guy who will make Dean Kramer the number 5 pitcher all the time. Assuming Means is healthy enough, but will solidify Dean Kramer as a number 5 starter in the rotation. And if that is the case, like the Orioles have one of the better rotations, like in baseball, I think, assuming that Grayson and Bradish really, keep up what they were doing last year. They looked like, they were 2 of the top 5 pitchers in the American League last year through the second half. So I think that if we add somebody who truly is a front of the rotation arm, you've got a 3-headed monster at the top, and Dean Kramer is going to be the best number 5 starter in all of baseball. Maybe competing with like Charlie Morton of the Braves. Morton's probably better, but we like find ourselves in a situation where by adding to the front, you are strengthening the back. So I think that absolutely has to be the priority. And I think that in addition to that, I don't think that there's a means of improving the rotation in any significant way that does not include getting somebody who goes into the front half. Like I think that any mid to back rotation option that we bring in doesn't really strengthen things all too much. Just because we do have Wells who has success. We do have, DL Hall who's got such dominant stuff. We do have a couple other arms. To the point of the back end reliever, I think that really is the other thing. The Orioles have traditionally, over the course of the last year, it's been mostly shorter starts. We have some upside in the rotation, but we do not have guys who are going to go 6 to 7 innings every single time out. We relied on our bullpen accordingly and used them very, very heavily. We talked about how much Cano was used last year. We talked about Felix. So I think that the Orioles definitely do need to build out the bullpen, and the back end is the clear place that we can go do that with the financial flexibility that we have. You have to look at a Hector Neris or Robert Stevenson or somebody, like with that high impact arm who you can bring in on a deal somewhere around $10 million a year for a couple of years and feel good about, that allocation of resources and feel good about how that makes our team look heading into next year.
Okay. Yeah. We can definitely talk on like specific players here in a second that maybe fill those voids. But Jess, I'll ask you if there's anything on your offseason wish list in addition to those things, or, if you agree with that assessment of Elias, particularly like that front half, which is an interesting usage of words, I think. But what do you think about his wish list there?
I mean, I guess it's a little confusing because there are 5 people in the rotation.
Right.
So is a 3 starter the front half, or
I think
I
so.
Guess
I think 1 through
gotcha.
3 in my mind. Like, who would pitch in a playoff series? Like, for sure, your 1 through 3 guys.
Right.
But again, open to interpretation.
I mean, Elias went to Yale. I think that he has some inkling of what half means, and rounded in some way, shape, or form.
Sure, he can divide 5 by 2, I guess.
That's all I'm getting at.
Fair enough.
So I guess my thing. So I gotta say I am a little confused by the priorities, right? Because if I'm looking at this Orioles roster going into next year, I mean, what stands out to me is I think the O's could use another power bat. And the fact that was not mentioned is a little confusing to me. I think if we could add one more 30 home run guy to our lineup, we have Henderson, we have Santander, and it's a little unclear. Maybe we have Mountcastle, maybe we have Rutschman that fit those. But it's 2 guys that I would say are likely to hit 30 home runs or right around that that number. And the Orioles had the 11th best slugging percentage out of the league last year. So I see, if I'm looking at it, I think the power is sort of one area or one realm where the Orioles could upgrade. Um, Now, as far as the back of the end rotation, yeah, I mean, this is sort of the problem Felix is causing us. If we had
Oh, the
if we
bullpen, you
had
mean?
yeah, if we
Okay.
had Felix next year, then I think it wouldn't be, the bullpen would be a giant strength. The back end of the bullpen would be a giant strength, with Bautista, Cano, and hopefully Dylan Tate. But because Bautista is down for next year, and because Tate is, will hopefully be good but questionable, I think it does make sense for the Orioles to try to find a back end reliever. Now, I do think I do sort of place the priority out of those two things, I think, on the bat, just because I think the Orioles will have more of an ability to figure the bullpen out and to invent a new Yennier Cano somewhere out of our guys, whether that's CNL Perez returning to form, sort of like he sort of did at the end of the year, or something along those lines. I think the Orioles' possibilities of finding a solid back end option are much greater than their ability to find a serious threat in the middle of the order. So if I was going to place any importance, I would say let's place importance on the bat. But I think also for Elias, it sort of goes back into this whole question about, well, first of all, it's easier to just, get a reliever than to make a commitment for the long term, probably, because a 30 home run power bat is probably going to require a 3 or 4 year deal or something like that. So that's more likely. It's easier to just solve the back end of the bullpen than it is to solve and to get a big power bat. So I think that's why the emphasis is there. And then it sort of goes back into this whole question about, well, how much do we really have to make the team better? We're already, last year we were a 100-win team. Why do we need to push for 110 or 115? What's the usefulness of that? So you sort of spiral back into those conversations, especially when it would be a serious investment probably to get a big power bat, either through trades or through free agency.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a good point. I do think like the Orioles seem to believe they have the secret sauce on certain types of player development things. I think they really believe in their ability to develop hitters, or to take premium talent in hitters and translate it from a prospect to a big league producing person, because they've done it with Rutschman at the top of the draft. They've done it with Henderson. They've already gotten Cowser and Kjerstad to the big leagues Kjerstad's particularly interesting because he had the whole myocarditis stuff. Like, they've taken all their top picks so far and they've gotten them at least to the big leagues, and in 2 cases have been fantastic. And maybe Kjerstad and Cowser are still to come. And if Kjerstad is what they think he is, that's your 30 home run guy. Now, in a rookie season, is your 30 home run guy? I don't know if you can say that, but you have to think they've got to make a move in the outfield somewhere. I can't see all of Santander, Mullins, and Hayes all coming back next year. Now, to me, Hayes is the odd man out in my mind.
Yep.
But that's where Kjerstad slides in and maybe gives you your 30 home runs. But that's all. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Eli.
Sorry, super quick note on Kjerstad. Just wanted to say, I mentioned hard hit rates on the Orioles last year. Heston Kjerstad, in a small sample size, of course, but had the highest hard hit rate of any player on the Orioles.
Yeah, I mean, he came up and I was impressed by him. Like, clearly looked rookie-ish in a lot of ways, was striking out a lot. And I don't love the athleticism of him, and in the outfield worries me. He doesn't look great out there. But if him and Santander can maybe share right field, you figure out something else in left field. I don't know. But because that's all to say, I do agree with you, Jesse, that they need another power bat somewhere. It just wasn't quite there. And clearly the Rangers exploited a lot of people in that way. Just like how every member of the Rangers lineup could like hit a home run at any moment is such a, not to be redundant, but a powerful thing to have, especially in the postseason when sometimes, those manufacturing runs can be at a premium. You just need to be able to hit a 2-run, 3-run bomb every now and then. And that definitely was missing from the Orioles last year. So I agree with you there. I would love to see a power bat, at least the idea of getting more power in the lineup. That idea is used in terms of how they address the team this winter, whether it's a trade to make room for Kjerstad or to sign a Cody Bellinger. Yeah, right. I would love to see that. And then obviously the reliever thing, I think is important. I think they can develop some guys there. They can figure something out. They've kind of, to me, again, that's their secret sauce. I think they've shown an ability to kind of find quality relievers out of nowhere and really focus on traits that they have to make them effective. So I don't worry about that. I think I'm with like the majority of the Orioles fan base though, as far as a top rotation piece. I don't necessarily need to see them go get an ace. Like those are hard to find, and maybe Rodriguez or Bradish already is that. So I'm not like going to freak out if they don't go find, Clayton Kershaw from a decade ago. Like I get that doesn't happen. I personally like kind of covet Corbin Burns, although I get it's only 1 year of control, but they got to get a 1-2 type of guy. Like we'll talk about specifics here in a second, but you can't go get just an innings eater Kyle Gibson type again. Love him for what he did. Good luck to him on the Cardinals, but they need like that anchor at the top of the rotation. Love to see Bradish get opening day next year, but maybe a guy to pitch the second day of the year next year. Those would be my top two. I would agree with you, Jesse, that it's top of the rotation and a solution to the power problem, whether that's an addition or not, but some sort of a solution there.
So real quick, we had talked about kind of around playoff time, we had talked specifically about how it seemed like the Orioles would suffer against left-handed pitching and how we thought a right-handed bat specifically seemed more needed than left-handed, despite, the limitations of our field and everything. Do you guys still agree with that?
It depends. Like, there are some lefties that don't have as much trouble with left-handed pitching.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to remember. I feel like we've talked about Cody Bellinger before, and I feel like he's one that doesn't seem to have drastic splits. If I'm remembering correctly, I'd have to look that up.
I do think that's right. I think he's getting $250 million this year, though. So.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And obviously, those guys don't grow on trees. And I think they did the platoon thing a lot last year with a lot of players. I mean, Mateo was in a lot against lefties. Mountcastle has been crushing lefties. I think you can do that in enough places on the roster to kind of, even that out a little bit.
Yeah. The only question for me is that, like, because, we all seemingly agreed that Hayes was the guy who was most likely to go in a trade, that is subtracting one more right-handed option. And, at that, it's subtracting a right-handed option that did lead off for us against lefties. When we were dropping Gunnar to the 6 hole, Hayes a lot of times would jump up. So, yeah, I don't know. It's a watch item for me. I think that like somebody like a Jorge Soler would strike out way too much and such. So I tend to lean more contact from the right side, because I think we need a right-handed bat, and I think the right-handed power gets neutralized because of the left field wall. So I think that we, I don't know, can target another type of hitter. Like obviously you want to keep like doubles power, and you're not going to say like somebody with an average exit velocity of 14 miles an hour is the kind of guy we want. But it's not like a right-handed Luis Arias, but I think that
yeah, no, it's a good point. I mean, they've still got Westberg, assuming he's not traded. You assume at some point this year we're gonna see Holiday, who I know he's lefty. Mayo is righty, Norby is righty. Some of these guys, Joey Ortiz is righty. Like some of these guys are not going to be here, but beyond Cowser, Kjerstad and Holiday are all lefties, and then the rest seem to be righties. So yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point. It's something to think about for sure. Especially Urias could be gone. I could see him traded.
Mm-hmm.
Hayes. Yeah, it's an important point for sure. All right, well, let's talk about specifics now a little bit here. So, assuming that a top starter is kind of an avenue we want to go down, especially in free agency. There's not a ton of them this year, but those that are available, Sonny Gray and Aaron Nola have already signed. Gray's going to the Cardinals, and Nola is going back to Philadelphia. All the other big ones that are still out there, or that were available, are still out there, and no significant trades have happened yet involving starting pitchers. I think we talked about Burns already. Dylan Cease is the other big one, which I'm sure we'll get into here. But Eli, do you have your eyes set, or did you have your eyes set on anybody in particular that maybe is already gone or could go this offseason?
Yeah, I really liked Sonny Gray. I don't know. He was really dominant last year. He did it in short starts, but he had good K rates. He didn't give up a ton of home runs. Pretty much everything was likable about him. And he, played in a pretty hitter friendly ballpark in Target Field and everything. So I think that he would have been my top option, and I partially catered that to what I thought the Orioles could do. Mm-hmm. Because he is already 34 years old and was going to command, it would have been higher AAV, but it would have been a shorter number of years. And I thought the Orioles might have found that a little bit less risky. I think that when Nola got 7 years, 172, that's almost 25 a year for, I think he's in his age 31 season or something like that. And, he showed some signs of decline last year as well. So it set the price point for the market pretty high. I think that, the price of starting pitching has been going way, way up in the last 3 years or so. And so when I saw that, I was like, okay, I think that Sonny Gray is probably going to be too expensive. And he ended up, with, equally high AAVs over the 3 years. And I do think it was probably prohibitively expensive for the Orioles. But Jeff Passan did connect us to Nola before he signed, or maybe it was after he signed. But
yeah,
so it seems like we are having these conversations. It's tough to really nail down where the Orioles are shopping. And so I guess generally, because of the difficulty in getting it in free agency, the financial difficulties of it, I do tend to think that the Orioles are going to trade for that starting pitcher. I think that we will end up with one of Burns or Cease. And I think that, we will find investments in lower areas, like a reliever, like we were talking about, or potentially, some complementary pieces to the lineup, to et cetera, et cetera.
Do you have a preference, Burns or Cease?
I think obviously Corbin Burns is a better pitcher. Let me say that up front. Sure. But I do enjoy the idea of not needing to go through the same thing next year. Yeah. If we roll through with Burns and we lose in the ALDS again, next year it's going to be like, all right, we need to bring in a number one pitcher,
Yeah.
And we're not going to have the money to do it. And it's going to be the exact same situation we're in right now. So I think I like the idea of Cease. I like the security of it. I like that the Orioles can, address that need for the next 2 years. And then if we fall short again, you can spend next year trying to figure out how to push yourself over the line.
Yeah, fair enough. Jesse, I'll ask you the same about, maybe anybody in particular you've got your eye on, trade, free agency. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's I think what Eli said makes sense. I think the Orioles are right. We're in this. I don't know if there's another team in baseball that really would that wouldn't want to switch positions sort of with the Orioles, because the Orioles had a great team last year. We have a bunch of really we have a bunch of prospects that people think highly of and other teams and organizations think highly of, and our payroll is extremely low and we have a budget theoretically that we can spend. So the Orioles can really approach the offseason in any sort of direction that they want, whether that's signing somebody or whether that's trying to trade for somebody. I think either of the options is reasonable. And I think, right, like Eli was saying, Cease and Burns makes sense. But yeah, I mean, they're a handful, at least, a number of guys, that are free agents this year that I would be more than happy with the Orioles acquiring. So, I think one in particular isn't, one or the other isn't that significant to me. There's not like one guy on the list that I'm desperate for, but I think there's like a handful of guys that the Orioles, that could be a 2 or at a bare minimum a 3 on the Orioles, that I think the Orioles should really think seriously about. And I don't think there's really the Orioles don't really have any excuses at this point not to do anything. So, yeah.
No, it's a good point. There is clearly plenty of money to spend in free agency. And there is clearly enough talent within our organization to trade for, just about anybody that could logically be moved in a deal there. But okay, well, let's go through some names real quick since I've got a list up here, and this is not all inclusive, and it's not. I don't even know how we want to do this because obviously a lot of these guys you'd say, yeah, like let's sign them up. But I guess try in your brain to be like logical, like would the Orioles do it? And
think about it from Elias's perspective.
Do we like the fit here?
Yeah.
Shohei Ohtani.
Well, yeah, Shohei Ohtani.
That's my pick.
That's who you want? Okay. 500 mil. I don't know if he'll get 500 mil, but
logical.
Marcus Stroman. Oh,
that's one of I'm in favor of that.
You seem like you're shaking your head. No, I wasn't sure.
Oh, no. I'm in favor of that. I mean, right. I would say he's one of the top free agent candidates. That I would.
A little older.
Yeah, a little older. But I think with that, I think you could get him. I think he could theoretically agree to a 3 or 4 year deal. And I think that could theoretically be reasonable for the Orioles.
Yeah, pitched in AL East before, had some success. There's some logic there for sure. Eduardo Rodriguez, another hot name. Eli saying, yeah. Former Oriole prospect, traded to the Red Sox, lefty.
Go
ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, I think those two guys probably looking at, I don't know, just knocking down expectations for realism. I think that Rodriguez could come up on $100 million, but I think it'll be over a longer term because he's younger than some of the other free agent starters. And so I think that AAV could be more palatable for the Orioles. And like you guys said, Stroman could be on a bit of a shorter deal, and had some injuries. I am a little concerned. Like, he only pitched about 10 innings. Like, he had multiple starts and didn't go more than like 2 or 3 innings in any one of them over the last month of the season.
Oh, okay.
So there are some injury concerns, I think, with him, but at the same time, I think those two guys out of the remaining starters are the two that I think are possible for the Orioles and our best bets. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think Stroman would be more likely than Rodriguez, no?
Yeah, I think he's more likely.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I'm saying the two of them out of who's left are, I think, the two most reasonable, like, free agent starting pitching targets for the Orioles.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I was going to name a couple other ones. We can be quicker on these. I mean, Lucas Giolito, I think if you had talked to me in July, I would have said felt like a really good fit for the Orioles, but he just fell apart after he got traded last year. So now I don't even know what to think. But he could be a guy that does a shorter deal or maybe a 1 year deal even to like be like, I am good. Trust me. I don't know.
I'm just kind of uninspired. I think he falls into, what we were saying earlier about adding to the back half of the rotation doesn't do all too much for us. And I think that's one of these cases.
Fair enough. Blake Snell is an interesting one. Really good. Doesn't pitch long in games. So maybe not as much money. I don't know. I'm trying to like angle for it a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah,
I think he's going to get a lot. I think.
Yeah, he's making 150 plus, I think.
Yeah, 2 Cy Youngs. That'll do that. And then I think the last one I'll just mention is I feel like a hot name is Jordan Montgomery. Again, gonna get some cash. Really good. Pitched for the Yankees for a long time. Jesse's not so sure about it.
Well, I don't think it's happening. That's for sure.
Because he's
Yeah.
gonna get too much, you're saying?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay.
What I will say though, an angle that we have not mentioned, the Orioles ballpark clearly favors left-handed pitching, because of the big right or the big left field. So I think that that does have Erod written all over it. I still think Snow and Montgomery are too expensive, but the one name we didn't mention was Shota Imanaga. And he, like, the one knock on him is that he's a bit homer prone, but really good command, an interesting skill set, and they're thinking he's something on the order of like 5 or 6 years and $80 million coming over from Japan. So that is one name that's on my radar too. I think could be pretty interesting, and the Orioles could kind of look at it as a market inefficiency because maybe a little bit less information on him, and our field would play well for him. The field negates the one big weakness that he has. So he's interesting to me.
So just out of curiosity, so I'm assuming Urias hasn't even come up because we assume he'll be way too expensive.
No, domestic violence.
Yeah, he might not play.
Oh, I didn't even know about that.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Okay. But the other one I was looking at too, obviously he had a rough year last year, was Sean Manaea. And
he's had a rough couple of years, I think. Yeah.
Multiple
right.
years.
So you don't see any future for him.
I think it's more
Orioles.
Not with us.
Yeah, I think it's more of what Eli was saying. He's like filler, like back of the rotation type stuff that, yeah, because I had him on fantasy, I think a year or two ago, and I was just like, wow, I can't even like play him. This is just like ridiculous. He can't even play for me.
He's a Pittsburgh Pirates. He's got Pirates written all over him.
Yeah. Him and Jordan Lyles. If Lyles gets another contract this year, he was so bad for the Royals last year.
It's terrible.
Unreal. Yeah, I think the Japanese pitcher is interesting because he's older. He's 30. He's not Yamamoto. He's not like the one that's going to get huge money. I think it's interesting because I know I was interested in Senga last year before the Mets signed him. Now, he didn't get huge money. I think it was like $85 million. I mean, I'd love to have $85 million, but it wasn't like ridiculous. And he was really solid, also younger, also right-handed. But I do think the more these pitchers come over and perform well, it does kind of lower that like variability in at least, major league teams' minds a little bit. Now, being a 30-year-old coming over, maybe there still is some question marks there. But yeah, I would be into that. It's tough to say he's going to be a number 2 though coming over,
right?
But
yeah, he's definitely, when we talk about splitting the 5 in half and the 2 in a half.
Yeah.
He's probably on the right side of the half, but
fair enough. Cool. So in terms of trades though, okay, so we talked about Cease and you talked about Eli. You specifically said you think we'll get either Cease or Burns. Like you kind of are calling your shot Babe Ruth style a little bit. I mean, do you want to talk about like what that deal maybe looks like? I guess for Cease, you're saying is sort of what you're thinking.
Yeah, I mean, it will definitely be expensive. That's the first thing I'll say. Yeah, I think that it's going to hurt some hearts. I think that, if we look at it, I think that you're going to need, let's talk about like our upper echelon of prospects, probably like Holiday's in a class of his own. Then you've probably got Basayo and Mayo and Kerstad Kauser. We'll call them like a group of 4. I think that Basayo might be a top 10 prospect in all of baseball right now, based on how he's hitting and the fact that he was in Double A as an 18-year-old. But let's chunk them in one group of 4, and then let's talk about like Joey, Norby, and a couple, like one tier below that, still top 100 or borderline top 100. I think that you're going to need probably one guy out of the second group. You're going to need one of Mayo or Kauser or Kerstad. I think one of them will need to be in it. And I think that from there you can go to like a Dylan Beavers or a couple tiers below, kind of one mid-level prospect. And then I think you probably have one complementary piece from the major league team. So something like a Cowser. I'm trying to think of the major league piece. I'm struggling.
Yeah, I think it had to be a pitcher of some kind.
Yeah, I think so too. So maybe, honestly, maybe like Dean Kramer.
Yeah, it could be a Kramer in there.
A couple years of Kramer, and a Dylan Beavers or something like that. Maybe they wouldn't want two outfielders, so maybe it ends up as like Norby, Cowser, and a Dean Kramer or something of that sort.
Yeah. Norby's an interesting one because the Orioles put him in the outfield, or the Tides put him in the outfield a lot too. So I don't even know what the Orioles
that's true.
think of him.
Yeah.
I mean, I think
I think the White Sox need infielders more than outfielders, though, is what's in my mind.
Yeah, because they didn't tender Tim Anderson, right? He's a free agent.
Right.
I mean, he was bad last year, but
yeah,
it's interesting. I know I'm trying to, there's so much going on, and the Soto to the Yankees stuff they've been potential trade packages that to me don't seem terribly impressive for Juan Soto.
Right.
I mean, it's only 1 year of Juan Soto, but like, I don't know, 1 year of Juan Soto, 2 years of Dylan Cease, like those don't feel totally incompatible. Like I think they're worth similar amounts.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. And the White Sox have a new GM. Maybe you could fleece them. I don't know. I think, like, to me, and I need to shift my brain again, is like I need to go from rebuild brain to like winning brain, and the winning brain doesn't care about prospects in general. Like, you don't want to lose Holiday, but then you think about the rest of the infield. Well, you're gonna have Holiday and Henderson playing 2 of the spots, so you don't need Mayo and Westberg and Norby, and you don't need all these guys.
Right.
So they become like, you either trade them and get something, or they waste away. So I think I'm kind of fine with anybody that's not Holiday. And then I think Kerstad is on the roster. I think Cowser has become expendable a little bit this offseason, which I love. I really like a lot of things about Cowser, but I think maybe he becomes your like centerpiece for a trade. And then the rest of it, I don't know if it matters all that much from an Oriole perspective.
Yeah. I think that, I don't know, to me, the most easily expendable piece like of the names we've thrown around is Connor Norby, because he has a lot of upside with the bat. He hit 28 or 29 bombs in 2022, and then kind of started off slow, but was firing on all cylinders as the year went on. But he's somebody who doesn't really have a defensive home. He like played second base through college. And quite frankly, we just like, I don't know, this is a situation where, to me, you talk about the value of somebody like Jorge Mateo as, like compared to the alternative. And so like, Mateo can perfectly well hold down the utility infielder role. And Connor Norby probably has much, much more value in a trade. And so you look at like how you want to most effectively allocate, the resources that you have right here. It's not taking Connor Norby, who might have a higher upside, and trying to fit him on the roster as a backup second baseman. Mm-hmm. The most efficient way to allocate those resources is to use him to upgrade somewhere else, because you already have a perfectly acceptable backup infielder. So like, to me, Connor Norby is probably the guy that goes first. I think they hold out hope of keeping a Kobe Mayo at third base and potentially slotting him up with Holiday and Gunnar up the middle. Like that makes a lot of sense to me. Or you just wait until Mountcastle and O'Hearn are fully graduated and you stick Kobe Mayo at first base for the rest of time, because he's probably going to thump enough to make that happen. I don't know. It's all very interesting.
I just struggle to see if Norby's enough, you know what I mean? Because we can see the same things the White Sox can see, which is, the guy can handle the bat a little bit, but if he can't play infield, the value is diminished. Like I can find a lot of people that can hit and play right field.
Don't get me wrong. I definitely do not think a Connor Norby can be a headliner in a Dylan Cease package. That's not where I'm coming from. I just have the most confidence that he will be going somewhere this offseason of like any of our top 10 prospects, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
Jess, do you view any of our prospects as like untouchable? I guess beyond Holiday, I feel like that's kind of yes,
Right. Pretty intuitive. No, just Holiday.
but okay, fair enough.
Not
Um,
Basayo.
I
I'm just curious why not Basayo?
oh yeah, I would include him on that list. I mean,
Oh.
yeah, I mean, right.
I'm not
Yeah,
fully convinced
I think
he's
the
untouchable for me.
yeah, I mean, it depends. Like,
I think for a
you know,
Dylan Cease,
if
he's
they
untouchable, but
right, yeah,
yeah.
I mean, right. If they give us Juan Soto for a year for then sure. But like,
Oh,
No, I
of
totally disagree with that. I would never do that in a million years.
Juan Soto
Yeah, no, I
not
don't
for
think I'd do
1
that.
year, not for
or
1
like
year.
with a chance to re-sign him. Like,
No.
okay, yeah. Anyway,
I think I would need
No,
like I would need a
Soto's going to get 500 million next year.
yeah.
right,
I
yeah,
think Basayo
for
I would
sure.
make available for like a pitcher that you've got like 3 years of control, like a top tier-ish pitcher that you could have
Right.
like 3 years of control of.
It's got to be like on the level of maybe George Kirby, and that would have to be like
Yeah.
straight up.
Well, and
But-
also him being out west, a different division. Well, I'd love for him to be in a different league too. Like
right, right.
that would
Yeah.
be good.
So you don't have to look at him as much.
Yeah.
No, but Basayo's numbers last year are like on par with
Yeah, incredible. Yeah.
Well, they're like on par, if not better, than like what Wander Franco, Vlad Guerrero, and these caliber prospects were doing at their age 18 season, and he's doing it at a higher level. I mean, the guy is like,
and he's a catcher.
Potentially generational talent, right?
Are we trading Adley Rutschman this offseason?
I don't know. I think like, unfortunately, our ability to churn out talent is enforcing John Angelos's idea that we can be the Rays and we can just never get attached to one player because there are more coming.
Yeah.
Well, trade Adley in like 3 or 4 years when
Well,
like,
that probably
they're talking about trading Randy Arozarena.
yeah. I mean, and it might not it might be a big reason why he hasn't gotten an extension too.
Who, Rutschman?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's a catcher. He's not old, but he's like 25 already. He'll be like 30 when he hits free agency. Do you want to pay a 34-year-old catcher? I don't know.
Right.
No,
but I think, I think the Basayo question is interesting because, I don't know. Yeah, there's no clear fit because of Adley. And this is kind of the discussion between rebuild brain and current win brain.
Yeah.
But then also, how do you balance the two to make sure that you do actually stay good for a long time?
It's tough to do without spending money the way that the best teams actually do.
Yeah.
You need to do both things. You need to spend enough to fill the gaps that your farm system can't really fill because you trade the guys away. And the Orioles currently do not do that. So they can't.
You need to be the Dodgers.
Yeah. And just to clarify what I was saying, I think like realistically, I think Basayo is on that list, but of course, like I don't think anybody is exactly untouchable for the most part, but realistically, I would put him in the untouchable category.
Okay.
With Holiday. Yeah.
All right. I want to talk about one rumor and then we'll wrap up kind of just like with our ideal offseason, I think, before we kind of get out of here. So one rumor has actually come through. And I think it's notable because there's really very few rumors that come around the Orioles, apart from that Nola one, which happened after the deal was already done. So it was worthless, but the Orioles don't leak a lot. So there aren't many rumors that come out surrounding the Orioles, but one did come out this week that was kind of weird. So it came from a Japanese website called Sanspo, and it links the Orioles to a Japanese league pitcher named Naoki Iwasawa, who is a right-handed pitcher, is said to throw in like the low 90s, high 80s, not overpowering stuff. The rumor says that the Orioles have basically been in talks with him. They view him as a 4th or 5th starter in their rotation, and his salary, I don't know if it said how many years it would be, but the average annual value would be $2 to $3 million per year. Now, this rumor is interesting because it is very specific in terms of all of this. It's laying out a role for him. It's laying out a salary. It's saying the Orioles are talking to him already. Like, that is a lot of information. So Jesse, do you think this rumor is for real, or is this some shenanigans going on from the part of the representation for this Japanese pitcher?
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak to its validity. I just don't know. But yeah, it would be, of course, like as you're saying and indicating, it would be strange for it to be accurate and that things were not more quiet about this if things were this far and this deep into the level of negotiation. So, yeah, I guess I'm erring on the side of not believing it. But or at a bare minimum not believing the specificity of it, but I definitely, will make no definitive comments about it. So.
You're not going to catch Jesse here. You're not going to cancel him for making ridiculous claims there. But okay, noted. Eli, what do you think about this? It came out of like nowhere, and nobody here has like really substantiated it yet. So who knows? But what do you think?
Yeah, there have been I don't know. I saw a site that covers the Asian baseball leagues say that this is one of the more reputable newspapers in that area.
Okay.
I have not verified it for myself because obviously I don't know anything. So I'm gonna give caveats like Jesse did.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that it makes a tiny bit of sense. If you really are at the price range of 2 to 3 million AAV,
Sure.
that's somebody that you can put in the bullpen with no concerns whatsoever. And I can just add one note that Saris of The Athletic, who does some of the best, like he created the Stuff Plus model and does some of the best analysis on truly like what makes a pitcher good. Saris went ahead and said that this guy's got a 2,600 RPM fastball. And despite the low velocity, that is something that can really play. And you do see some bullpen arms that do have, like high spin rate, low velocity, a la Paul Sewald or something like that, that can become effective. The one thing that does concern me about this guy is he's only got like an 18% K rate in Japan, which, if you draw that directly over, league average K rates are in 20 to 21% range. And they almost always drop in the jump to the US because US hitters, or not US, MLB hitters are better. So it's I don't know. Whether he would truly be our fourth or fifth starter, I'm kind of skeptical of that. But at the $2 to $3 million price range, you could bring in somebody who could eat 2 innings and be an effective bullpen piece, if used properly. And, I'm assuming the Orioles would be able to refine the repertoire a little bit, et cetera, et cetera. So I do think that he could make sense as a fit, as a complementary piece. Do I hope that this is all the Orioles do this year? No.
Yeah, no, I think I'm right there with you. His profile makes him seem more like a swingman type of guy that can make a spot start for you, can give you 3 innings after somebody gets hurt or maybe just has a bad day on the mound. I think that feels, and at $2 to $3 million, that's what that role kind of garners on a free agent basis. This is not even a fifth starter. You're getting $10 million a year. I mean, that's what Kyle Gibson got. Now, to be technically our opening day starter, our ace last year, but really, more of a 4 or 5. He got $10 million. So 2 to 3 is not a fourth or fifth starter. And the fact that this news came out at all, it came out, I think, the day that he was posted for the first time, which opened his posting window. It just feels like, I don't know, stirring the pot a little bit from a representation perspective. Now, the fact that Sanspo is the only website that talked about it, not ESPN or anywhere else, is a little bit odd. But yeah, I wouldn't hate it, but certainly doesn't address some of the Orioles' biggest issues. So yeah, go for it. I'm all about it. I know I didn't know who, Koji Uehara was when the Orioles signed him years ago, and he turned out really good. Wei-Yin Chen, similar. So yeah, I'm fine with it. If the Orioles have bought themselves some benefit of the doubt with identifying talent. So I'm cool with that. All right, before we wrap it up, let's just talk about maybe what our ideal off seasons each look like. We don't have to spend a ton of time on them, but Jesse, maybe I'll ask you, if you had your druthers, what would the Orioles off season look like to you? At least in terms of additions. You don't have to say like we trade away X guy or Y guy, but like who do you want on the Orioles roster from that's not currently on it by the time the season starts. That's
Um,
realistic. Like,
right. Yeah. I guess I would. I
I know
mean,
I just kind of threw this at you.
yeah, no, it's
Do
no
you need a
problem.
moment?
No, well, Eli can answer first, and then
Okay.
I can. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I got mine.
I'll ask Eli.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think I would want to trade for Dylan Cease. I would
Okay.
want to go and I would want to sign Hector Neris to solidify the back end. And then I would want to sign Tommy Pham.
Wow. Okay, Tommy Pham. That's kind of, you didn't mention that earlier. Do you want to expand on that?
He's a good OBP, like, he's not short on power by any means. Like, he's not the 30 home run guy that Jesse was talking about, particularly not in our ballpark. But I think that, if Gunnar needs to slide down in the lineup against lefties and, doesn't continue to make the progression that we would hope he does, like, I think he's a really, really great safeguard. Tommy Pham is a great safeguard, and he's somebody who can, sit in the 3 or 4 hole at the top of a lineup and look really good against a left-handed pitcher. So I like that thought. He can handle himself in the outfield. He's not absolutely incredible or anything. But in the world where we trade Austin Hayes, I think that he can cover left field and do really well for us. So,
okay, interesting.
Yeah. And I like Hector Neris. He, obviously showed out last year. Had, I don't know, a 1.71 ERA, 2.5 WAR out of the pen for the Astros. He is a bit older, so again, probably be a short-term deal, which I think the Orioles would prefer. It's not Josh Hader, for 5 or 6 years and $100 million or anything like that. And he's very effective, and he's got closer experience previously, so we could slot him in there if we want it and let Guinier and Cionel Perez and, like Jesse said, Dylan Tate, if he's back, let all those guys kind of filter out into setup and complementary roles, and I think that looks pretty good as a bullpen.
Okay, fair enough. Very, very comprehensive. So it was Dylan Cease trade, Hector Neris in the bullpen, Tommy Pham in the outfield. Those are your 3.
Yeah. And we might need, like we talked about, like a Dean Kramer or something like that. Some piece going back, so we might need to pick up one more starting pitcher. I don't really care who that is, but backfill, I guess, is the point.
Jack Flaherty's available, I think.
Yeah, Tommy Malone is available.
All right, fair enough. That's a good summary there. I think Oriole fans will be pretty happy with that. They got their top 2-ish pitcher. They got some reinforcements at the back of the bullpen, and Tommy Pham was just on a team that went to the World Series, so you can't really complain about that. Jess, what do you think?
Yeah, so I guess yeah, I will co-sign the Neris, and I will co-sign the Cease. As far as Tommy Pham, I love Tommy Pham. I've loved Tommy Pham for a long time. I think he's a great player. He's a veteran. I'm not sure he's necessarily like the perfect fit. But I definitely think there's a lot of merit. I think, especially as a veteran, like, I think just from reading between the lines, like, I feel like he's been very valuable for the Diamondbacks and on their run. And he actually played like a critical, he wasn't just like a veteran who sat on the bench for them. He played a critical role, even throughout the playoffs and their playoff success. So, with all that said, I'm actually looking at, like, now, granted, I don't know how I would have to think more about how everything is going to get reshuffled. But I was looking at like Teoscar Hernandez potentially, and even now this doesn't address the power question, but even like Eddie Rosario is a potential option. So I think
he hits bombs. He hits 30.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, so you would expect him to hit. Did he hit 30 last year?
He was kind of a complimentary piece for Atlanta, but he still might have.
Okay.
I
more thought about him as like a 20, but in any case, I mean, that's yeah. But regardless, like, so yeah, but I would think about either of them as a possible option. Now, granted, both of them are sort of like Teoscar is a right fielder, so how do you work him in with Santander? And then, like, of course, if you got Rosario, right, like, well, you probably have to deal Hayes at that point. So I think those sort of questions need to be worked out, but something like that happening. I do I do really love the idea of Teoscar Hernandez, though, but trying to figure out how he would fit would be tough. So
I think that's a good call. I like that. And
Okay.
for what it's worth, Rosario from 2017 to 19 hit 33, 31, and 28, and has not topped the 24 he hit last year since. So
okay,
I think I'm a little outdated there.
Cool. Yeah, I can't say I put a ton of thought into this prior to this podcast either. So Jesse, I'm right in the same boat with you as far as having to think through some things a little bit. I think initially the pitcher I prefer, and I talked about this, was Corbin Burns over Dylan Cease. I just like the pitcher better. Don't love that it's 1 year. I do think maybe there's a reality in which the Orioles can get him in the door and potentially do some sort of an extension. The Braves do it with everybody they trade for. I mean, why can't the Orioles do it? I don't know. So
I just think Burns is on another level. Like he'll be like 29 or something as a free agent, and he's gonna make, it'll be a $250 million contract probably. He's been so good.
He has been so good. I know, but they just like, and that's always risky. I think like when you think about those big contracts that work out, like literally, I think it's Max Scherzer and nobody else. Like I think the Nationals are the only team that's happy that they made one of those. Think about like the Tigers with Jordan Zimmerman, although that's like that's maybe not as much of a comparison because that was.
Well, I mean, but you can look at like, I don't know, Zach Wheeler for the Phillies was like $150 million deal or something.
That's been good. Yeah. I mean, that's really good. Yeah. I don't know. Corbin Burns, I think he puts the Orioles, he jumps them up a level that I don't know that Dylan Cease does. I can see Dylan Cease becoming the ire of Orioles Twitter and it's June and he's walked 5 guys in 4 innings for the 7th time. Like I can see that happening very easily. Whereas Corbin Burns, I just expect he's going to step right in and be dominant. And I would love that. And I think potentially you don't have to give up a ton because he is, I mean, you got to give up something, but he's got 1 year left. You're not giving up the farm for him. I would love that. And at the same time, I would also love for the Orioles to look into doing some kind of a deal with Brandon Woodruff, another Brewers pitcher, probably going to miss maybe not the whole year next year. A lot of it, he had a bad injury stuff this past year. It's going to keep him out a lot of next year. But the talk there is he could potentially do a 2-year deal where it's baked in that he's not really going to pitch in 2024, but then you got Brandon Woodruff in 2025. And even though he was hurt this year, when he did pitch, he was still really good. And that maybe kind of future proofs your ace situation there a little bit if you do go get a Burns or whatever and they walk after a year. So I kind of love that. I'm struggling to figure out what to do in the outfield there. I've been saying for years that the timeline for the Orioles lined up really well with getting Andrew McCutchen in. So I feel like I need to stick with that. Although all of the signs there are that is not going to, although if you look at McCutchen's numbers last year, they were pretty good. But he DH'd a lot.
I just can't see him leaving the Pirates before retiring. Like,
yeah, I
think he's going to ride a couple, 1 or 2 more 1-year deals and that'll be it.
Yeah, which is totally fair. But in my dream scenario, I would love to see Andrew McCutchen wear an Orioles uniform and be like that veteran leader who can still produce. I think that would be really cool on this team. And in that scenario, I'm assuming that Heston Kjerstad is going to kind of step in and be that power guy, and they're going to just kind of figure it out with everybody else to add that slugging percentage. And then I'm struggling again on the back of the bullpen. I don't know that I see the Orioles doing anything particularly sexy there. They're not going to go do a Josh Hader deal. I just don't know. The Orioles, they struggled. They got Michael Givens on free agency last year. That feels like the tier they kind of are comfortable with for free agent relievers. Didn't work out. So maybe they try to just like fix somebody. Because again,
it's a little bit different though, because we had Felix coming into last year. Now we've got a clear hole at the back of the pen.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the Orioles faked their way through the year last year a little bit. Look, they can say all they want about Yennier Cano. There's no way they came into 2024 being like Cano, we know he can be a guy. He started the year in AAA, and they totally stumbled their way into an all-star relief pitcher.
Right.
So I just think I think Mike Elias has these like specific theories on how you build a baseball team. And I almost think he's like, I can make a reliever. I don't need to go. I mean, now you could spend a couple $1 million and that's not that crazy to go get a reliever, but he's not going to go do like a $10 million. I don't know what Nearest would garner though. Do you know what that number would be?
That's kind of how I see it. Maybe it'd be like how old is he? I should figure that out. He's 30.
Spotrac has his market value at 7.6 million. Whatever that's. I don't know how accurate that is.
Yeah, I don't know. It just like with how good he was, and he's 34 years old. It feels like he could get a three-year deal at like 10 to 15 a year.
Okay, that's what Reynaldo Lopez just got 3 years, 30 million with the Braves.
Yeah, and he's a bit younger, but I think that I don't know, Neris was substantially better. So
yeah, multi-year deal for a reliever. That feels even less Elias-y, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. But I guess that's where I'm at is I think that, we see these multiple areas and like for starting pitching, you need to pay a ton of money. Like starters are the hot commodity. You got to pay much money to get a starting pitcher. And like we've been willing to throw around $10 million to Gibson, to Jordan Lyles, to Adam Frazier. So, like it seems like we have that little pool set, like we've got $10 million to spend on a free agent. And the place that it would actually help this team this year is in the bullpen, I think. I don't think a $10 million starting pitcher helps unless you are trading somebody away, like a Dean Kramer or something.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't know. There's going to be some reliever they'll go get, but I don't think it's going to be a multi-year guy. I could see like a 1 year, like a Joe Kelly type, which I know he's been bad lately, but like he'd do a 1 year, $5 million deal.
Yeah.
That feels more like the sweet spot.
So
I'll say that. That wasn't that sexy of an offseason, I guess. Now looking, they got a pitcher, which I think I'd be super happy with. If they get a top tier pitcher. So if they get Corbin Burns, I would be over the moon. So
right,
that's gonna be what I stick to.
I would too. Yeah,
but yeah, that's what we got. Any other offseason talk before we wrap stuff up here, boys? No.
All
right.
We're gonna have more on the offseason coming up. So.
Yes. So that kind of leads us to the final part here, which is just kind of me explaining a couple things. So the podcast is going to change up a little bit here, and it's exciting. It's good. It's positive change. So you may have already noticed from this episode, I'm not quite sure how it's going to work, but we have joined a podcast network. That podcast network is called Believe, spelled BLEAV. So what does this mean for you, the listeners? It shouldn't change a whole lot. So if you are already subscribed to us on Spotify or Apple or Google or wherever, we've already moved our feed over to Believe. You should get them the same as you always have. So if you haven't subscribed there, please do give us a rating. That would be awesome. But if you already are, nothing's going to change there. You'll get us on your feed, in your phone, or on your computer, just like always. If you're subscribed to us via email at our Substack, which is thewarehousepod.substack.com, that's still going to exist. However, we're no longer going to be using the native Substack podcast solution or player there, because just a little behind the scenes, we used to use Substack for distribution to all of the podcast platforms. Now we're going to be using Believe, so it's not going to work anymore. However, we'll still use that Substack for email notification of our episodes. I know some of you have gotten used to it. We're still going to do it there. We'll provide links on ways to listen to us on the various places. And I can probably even plug in a little native player from Believe in the email. So that's not going to change. It's just the way you interact with it will be a little bit different. You should also just go subscribe to us there if you're not already. Like I said, thewarehousepod.substack.com. You get it right to your email inbox. We're also going to probably tweak the layout over there so it works a little bit better. I'm kind of hoping to maybe write a few things over there this year, so I could probably tweak things there. And obviously Jesse and Eli would be welcome to write stuff as well. So give us a follow over there. It makes it into a nice little website that you can kind of navigate through a little easier than I think sometimes podcast apps are. Probably the biggest thing, or one of the biggest things, is you're going to start. Let me start again. Probably one of the bigger things is that you're going to start to hear advertisements in our episodes. This episode should already have a few of them, probably 2 or 3 in an episode. We don't currently have any say over the ads that run. They're run from Believe. So we don't know too much about it. That we just they use our content for ad space there. But if you have any concerns about the ads you hear, certainly reach out to us and we'll elevate those concerns up. We don't want to run on anything that is, upsetting or anything like that. But just know that as it currently exists, the ads are controlled by our podcast network there. And then finally, as part of this podship, that's what they should have called it.
Just leave that there. A partnership.
And then finally, as part of this partnership, we do need to increase the cadence at which we release episodes. So that is going to change as well. We're going to be doing 2 or 3 episodes per week. We'll try to get into a regular routine by the time the regular season is here. But for now, it's going to be a little bit scattershot. We're going to do episodes when we can, but it should, again, be 2 or 3 per week. And because of that increased cadence, it's not always going to be all 3 of us. We all have our own lives, jobs, families, things like that we need to take care of and attend to. So it's tough for all 3 of us to get online to record an episode 2 or 3 times a week. So instead, it's likely going to be 1 or maybe 2 of us in each of those episodes. And the episodes are going to be a little bit shorter in length. This one today was an epic, I think like hour and a half long. I don't even know the final time yet. They're going to be shorter, probably 30 to 40 minutes on 1 or 2 topics versus 10 topics that we sometimes cover. So that is going to be a big switch as well. But hopefully more content means staying further up to date, which I know is something we haven't done as well these last couple of years. So hoping to just improve the quality of the content, the relevancy of the content. And this partnership with Believe gives us some financial support to be able to do that and bring that to you guys as well. But I think I covered it all, guys. I mean, I'm excited about this partnership with Believe. I feel like you guys are as well. But yeah, anything to share with the listeners on the partnership here?
Yeah, to me, they approached us and like pretty quickly. It was exciting. I think, it lends us a little bit of legitimacy, for whatever reason. But, it's nice that somebody else appreciates it. And I'm excited to, kind of develop a new skill. Tyler and I had the solo episodes for the ALDS game recaps, but I think it will be interesting, to kind of find new dynamics, potentially recording alone, recording with Jesse, whereas Tyler serves as the primary host most of the time. So, I think it'll be a little bit of exploration for us. We'll try some new formats, probably come up with some new segments and such. Maybe do some mailbag kind of things. We'll explore it. We'll flesh it out over the off season. But yeah, pretty excited to dive into it, make this more of a regular thing, make it, I don't know, make it into something a little bit new. I think it's all really exciting.
To be more consistent with it. And yeah,
absolutely. It gives us kind of a stable foundation on which to build a little bit, which I think we've been looking for here for a couple of years. So it'll be cool. We'll learn stuff as we go. We'll get better at it. We're kind of admitting already the off season is probably going to be a little rocky. We're not used to talking to just ourselves or one other person. It's usually all 3 of us. So bear with us. Provide us any feedback. I think that the mailbag episode Eli referenced. If you guys have questions, we'd love for you to contribute there. You can email us, thewarehousepod@gmail.com. You can also DM us on Twitter or X at thewarehousepod. And kind of on that social note, we do have a Threads account now. It's currently pretty naked. We're not doing much over there yet, but we don't know what the future of X holds. So please give us a follow over on Threads. It's the same username we are everywhere else, The Warehouse Pod. So yeah, check us out there. But I think that's all we've got, guys. A lot in this episode. The last long one for a while. We promise if anything major happens, we will get the crew back together and all chat about it. But yeah, exciting times for us and the Orioles, right, Jess?
definitely. And just to clarify, like, we will try to make an effort to be all 3 of us together when we can. It's not going to be like the three of us are never getting back on here together ever again. So
No,
we're gonna
no.
try to do that, but it just might not be regularly or
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely. This setup just works better for our current life situation, but we're still talking. We're still friends. We're still in this together.
Yeah.
And we're going to try to at least do one episode a month where it's all three of us. That's our like hopeful commitment. But yeah, let us know. Give us any feedback you have on it. And we're happy to take it and build from there. But yeah, I think that's all we've got. Follow us on all the socials, subscribe, give us 5 stars, please. We really appreciate it. And we'll be talking to you here relatively soon. At least one of us will. But yeah, until then, this has been the Warehouse Podcast. I'm Tyler.
I'm Jesse.
And I'm Eli.
Thank you for listening.